Welcome to the Global Business Insights Podcast, featuring your hosts, Dr. Charlotte Brabandt and Max Kent.
Welcome everyone to our podcast, the Global Business Insight Podcast. And today I have the great pleasure of introducing one of my most inspirational mentors of my life to this podcast. He's not only a great leader, a great friend, but my biggest inspiration, who has given me all my equipment how to be a successful business leader. Joe, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Charlotte.
For
Good
taking
seeing you.
time.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And as always, my partner in crime, Max.
Hi, Charlotte. Hi, Joe. Great to see you.
Hey, Max. Good to meet you, my friend.
And you. Very much looking forward to this. Charlotte has told me a lot about you, so I'm looking forward to this.
Okay.
Absolutely. Joe, how about we just start by you introducing yourself with a quick introduction for a few seconds for our listeners today.
Yeah.
And then we can dig into some of our great questions.
Great. You got it. So my name is Joe Agresta. Right now, I am very proud to be at Rutgers University, where I'm an assistant professor and also a director of the master's program of supply chain analytics. And prior to that, I had a great career at Allied Signal for 20 years and then 20 years at Johnson & Johnson, and got to do a lot of things and got to work with a lot of great people. You know, Charlotte talks about mentorships and looking at people, and just to be with some great thought leaders in my life was fantastic. And most importantly, I have 4 children, all grown. I have 6 grandchildren. I'm an older guy, but you know, I still got a lot of fire left. So that's just a little bit about me, Charlotte.
Well, and that fire, it trickles down to me on a daily basis. Joe, we met when we both worked together at Johnson & Johnson, but then shortly after that, you actually diverged your career. And maybe you can explain a little bit to our listeners today what motivated you to move from a successful career at Johnson & Johnson to teaching then at Rutgers.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, you know, I had a 40-year career. I mean, so I was very, very fortunate to do a lot of different things. Both at Allied and then at J&J. But, you know, so after 40 years, you start to think about, you know, what do I want to do for the next part of my life? And I think for me, what was always important, even when I was in industry, was how do I give back a bit? I think I know a little something about things. So how can I give back? And actually what happened was, because like you, Charlotte, I chaired a lot of conferences and things, and I started to, when I retired from J&J, do some training. And one thing led to another, and Rutgers was looking for professionals. They have what they call professors of professional practice. So we have a lot of PhDs, do a lot of research, but they also like to complement that with folks like myself and my peers. And I got a chance to go to Rutgers as a professor. So my training that I was doing when I retired turned into coming to Rutgers. And as you know, Charlotte, Rutgers has a very close relationship with Johnson & Johnson. Very, very close. So I was really fortunate. I didn't expect to be here, but it's been 4 years and it's been really, really good. It's exceeded my expectations, and I like being there at Rutgers and helping the students.
Brilliant. I think it's really inspiring to hear, and it's certainly something I've thought about, is when you're in a business career and you go into sort of management and leadership, you are in a kind of teaching role, coaching role to some degree. So it can, and probably is, a natural next step to go into teaching or lecturing or sharing that knowledge and skills with the next generation. But having done that and worked with people myself, not on the same level as you, obviously, but I've noticed there's a big difference between people who've been in business and people who want to be in business. Mm-hmm. What's your kind of biggest differences that you observe between the two, do you think?
Well, I think with anything in the university, you got to give students practical experience. You know, we call it experiential learning. I think for me, if it was just Max classroom stuff, I don't know. I mean, lot to share, a lot of stories, some expertise. But if it was just classroom, I don't know that it would be good. So at Rutgers, we have a chance. We do experiential learning. I work with lots of different companies. We have to get the students to get practical experience, to apply what they learn. And we have all different kinds of programs. You know, there's the traditional internship, co-op type things. I run a master's class on Think Like an Executive, where we have executives come in, they challenge our students. The next week, the students have to respond back. So many vehicles. So for me, it almost feels like I'm back in industry, maybe with a little less of that pressure, the day-to-day pressure of being in the supply chain. But I think for me, Max, that's what you have to do in education, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you have to teach folks technical stuff, but if you don't give them the practical experience that they can talk about it when they get out, you're doing the students a disservice. So for me, that connection really motivates me, because I get excited. You know, we're doing big projects for all different types of industries. I also will say I'm learning a lot now, because we do projects for different kinds of companies, consumer products companies, all different types of. So for me, I'm learning, different industries. And, we just did a project on liquid hydrogen replacing diesel with a major corporation. I learned a lot, but at the same time was able to coach the students through their project or what have you. So a long answer for a short question, but I think that's the glue, Max, for me anyway.
Absolutely. And that's very much about the whole coaching aspect and the whole mentoring aspect. But I wonder, just because supply chain management is not really a subject that you study at school.
No.
So let me rephrase, there are many young professionals just might not understand the critical role of supply chain and which role it plays in business. Yeah. So how do you explain its importance to someone just starting their...
Yeah, so just to go back, in my day, the words weren't even used, right? Supply chain, they called it materials management, all those kind of things. I think what's happened today, probably a little bit pre-COVID, but certainly during COVID, supply chain became a very topical thing. People didn't, hear the word supply chain. But when I think about it, Charlotte, I look at supply chain as, all of these independent trading partners coming together to satisfy customers, right? So if you explain that, and you can talk to students or anyone, say, it's not just within four walls. Supply chain is all of these other entities that you're dealing with, right? And at the end of the day, the customer is at the end, and all of those things in between that you put together, that you connect, right? That you build alliances, both internally and externally, to really drive the customer. That's how I explain it. Independent trading partners, driving process and innovation at the end of the day to satisfy customers. And you want to try to paint a picture, right, Charlotte? You want to paint that picture of all of these things coming together. And I think then people can say, yeah, and it's not just logistics, or it's not just the warehouse, or it's not just manufacturing. I can be involved in lots of different things and have an impact during the course of a career. So, and this, you guys know this, supply chain has gone from, okay, let's see how much money we can save, to really being an integral part of the strategy of a company, right? How do we look at our network, right? Do we have a supply base in our network? What is the value stream? What does the value chain look like? How do we drive execution? So it's really become a big value contributor to an enterprise. And I think that gets people tweaked on too, to say, wow, I can have an impact on the bigger strategy of the business that I'm in. And today, Charlotte, today at Rutgers, we probably have 1,200 students majoring in supply chain. And then we have master's program that I run and all, but But at the same time, to your point, you got to get them to understand what it is and get them excited about the prospects of potentially making an impact.
It's really interesting hearing you talk about supply chain in that context, because I think it's obviously has evolved, certainly in my time working with it. And from you know, speaking about how it was referred to previously as well, it obviously has changed. The bits that I get involved in a lot more now is around ESG and ethics, and people wanting to know the whole lifetime cycle of that product, where it's come from, how it's been shipped, all of those things. Is that how you see the sort of evolution of supply chain continuing, do you think?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it's the whole cycle of the supply chain, right? Yeah. And you know, the things that you talk about. I mean, and it's everything from start with the people in the supply chain and how they contribute and the safety of those people, right? To the environment that you have them working with, to giving back into the communities, and all those things. But at the same time, driving execution and bringing. I have to say, I think the big change today is, you know, bringing more and more connected technology into the supply chain, whether it's Industry 4.0 or what have you. I think that's really an important element that's accelerating super fast, right? Having machines in Belgium talk to the machines in New Jersey, right? And look at, look at quality and variability, or where to put your next order in. So, I mean, those types of things, I think, become super important. The other thing I think that's bigger than when I started, you know, when I started, you worked hard, you pushed hard. Today, it's a lot about analytics, right? And having people understand data, and having people be able to not only be able to, you know, look at the data, be able to tell your story with that data. That is one thing we have to teach people in business, but also in the university. How do you tell your story with data, right? How do you, understand what the data is, where it comes from, how you clean it, all this other good stuff. But how do you tell your story with data? Because how you tell your story will drive decisions on where you put your next factory, where you're going, what kind of suppliers do you want to have? What are those sustainability or regulatory requirements that you have to deal with in your products? So I think that has become more and more, prevalent and a need in the supply chain.
Thank you so much for sharing, Joe. But, you know, one unique element that has always inspired me is your leadership and your mentorship. So maybe you can teach us a little bit your experience with all these young talents out there. In your opinion, what are the key qualities that now that you look for in the next generation of business leaders?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the future of work is going to be more about the questions you ask than maybe the answers that you have. And I think that you need to encourage people, whether in university or wherever, in business, have intellectual curiosity, ask those questions. Are you really able to work in teams? I know we've been talking about this over and over, but are you really able to work in teams? Can you be a contributor to a high-performing work team? And I define high-performing work teams of all the standard stuff, aggressive goals, all that good stuff. But there's one thing that differentiates a high-performing work team. How do you get people to share what they know with one another? And as a leader, that's kind of what you coach. You try to coach your people on share undeservedly one another. Charlotte, you did that, right? I mean, you were always, an integral part of our teams, but always sharing, and you had this intellectual curiosity. So you are kind of you're kind of the poster child of that, right? You had intellectual curiosity. You're passionate about things. You communicate. I remember when you were doing MRO stuff, you were very data-driven, right? Very data-driven. And so all of those things really come together. You also, and I say you, but you're a role model for that. How do the things that I'm doing connect to the bigger picture? to where the company wants to go, to how we'll treat customers. I think those are qualities. I think you don't necessarily, you're always going to learn the technical stuff. Look, I'm 66 years old. I'm learning from, these graduate students we have in analytics. Oh my gosh, they're so smart, right? And I learn from them, right? Still. So those qualities that, that you had, that passion, it starts there. You want to see people with passion. I don't think people don't have to have all the same personality, and you have to recognize that. Right? Like, oh, well, you're not like me, so I don't know that I'm going to coach you because you're not like me. No, some people they're different. And that's the part, that diversity of thought and everything. I love that then. I love it now. But you want to impart that on people that you coach, to let that come out of them. So that, Charlotte, I used to say, be inspired to inspire, right? Get inspired so that you can take some of this stuff and inspire others with it and learn from them. I know it's a long answer, but it's a continuous learning journey. It really, really is. And it starts with passion. In the supply chain, understand process a bit. If you want to get a little technical and things, let's not, it's not all in the cloud, so to speak, but understand process and things like that. And that willingness to learn and the willingness to ask questions, I think, is so, so important. I don't think people do that enough. Why are we doing something this way? Why does it take X amount of cycle time? Right? Why are we not looking at data? Let's ask some questions and then we'll go get some answers to it as a collective, right? As a team. So those are just some of the things that I think about. There's a lot there, right?
I think that's a fantastic answer, I think, because you did bring it back to supply chain as well. Actually, let's put this in context, because yes, there is the leadership side to this when you're working with people. But you do need to have that technical aspect to this of how this works within your industry. I think if we look at leadership on the whole, I'm just thinking about, times I've had lately with the people I manage and where there's disconnects or people don't see necessarily eye to eye. And where you talked about Charlotte and that communication style that she's got and that sharing, that's certainly what has made the difference about actually communicating with people, getting into the psyche of what they're thinking and then bringing those people together. And I see that as servant leadership. I know you've mentioned servant leadership. Certainly Charlotte's mentioned it many times before. Now I've met you, I know where she's got it from. So,
and servant leadership is, you're a good listener, you're empathetic. Being empathetic doesn't mean you have all the answers, but you're listening or whatever. I think the one thing people have to be careful about with servant leadership, let's just say you're the servant leader in a supply chain group. It's not like everybody just runs amok. You want to empower people to drive performance improvement and all that. But at the same time, you need to give them the guidelines, the coaching, the education, the ability to fail, and learn from the failure if that's what it is. And then also sometimes as a servant leader, make that hard decision based on the inputs that you get, so empowerment is important, but then there are going to be times as a leader, you're going to have to make that decision on, where are we going to put our next factory, or what type of supply do we have to move out of a certain type of supply, base that we have, and things like that. But it's not done in a vacuum. So I think that becomes important. I don't know, for me, to be honest, I don't know. I'm not, believe me, I got a lot to learn, a lot to do. But even as a kid, I always thought it was important, no matter whether you were the best person on the team or the worst person on the team, and I mean ability wise, right? You could make an impact. You could make an impact. And that's how I always felt about people. And I think it just carried on. And maybe some of that comes from my upbringing as well. So I think a lot of that, brings something to, to what you bring as an adult. Everybody's got something to give. You just have to also make sure, though, as a servant leader, that if they do need a course correction, that you're willing to do that as well. Right. So in today's world, we talked about, being a little bit more analytical, right? Or process oriented or whatever. And some folks have to recognize that that's a direction you may have to go, and will help you get there. And if you don't, you could be vulnerable, in your current role. And I think that's also part of a servant leader is being that, honest like that, and support people through that type of situation. And if they don't want to do it, well, that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother podcast, Max. So that's,
Absolutely. So much, Max, that we can learn from Joe's wisdom.
Absolutely.
Experience. And just building on from that,
sure.
You mentioned after your 40-year career at Johnson & Johnson. I can't even say that number.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. Just looking back at your whole at that career journey, what's one piece of advice you wish you could give to your younger self?
If they ask you to do a job, do it. Sometimes ego gets in the way, right? Well, wait a minute. That's not a manager role, or that's not a director role, or that's not, if they ask you to do your job, and I did, but looking back on it, and advice I would give to others is do it. You never know where this stuff leads to. You know what I mean? You never know where this stuff leads to. I think I think for me, being able to communicate at all levels, I think that becomes, I needed to do a better job at that from when I was younger. I mean, I always felt you just do your job, everybody will, recognize you or whatever. I think today you need to have the confidence to communicate at all levels. When you grow up, and it's always respect your elders. Sometimes when you have that respect your elders view, you don't speak up, right? Because I respect my elder. And, I think I could have done a better job, Charlotte, maybe earlier in my career in being more engaged that way, to be able to tell a story. Don't be able to, and like you, try new things. Try new things, and don't be afraid. Don't let others paint what you are. You have the brush. If I can just tell a quick, one of the pivotal parts of my career, I was at Allied Signal. I am not an engineer by education. I was supporting a very complex space program, guidance systems for, rockets. And the program was really faltering. Our customers of NASA, Boeing, Lockheed, whatever. And I put my hand up and I said, I want to run that program. Now, I was fortunate because our president, he gave me a shot. The customers said, we like this guy, but how could you put a non-rocket scientist running a space program with manufacturing and engineering? And, it could have scared the hell out of me, as far as I'm going to run away because the customers, but you know what? I think I had what they needed, right? To bring the team together. I love dealing with complexity as far as different functions. So, don't be afraid to try those things, and not just for my own growth, but I felt like I could make an impact on the business. I didn't just do it for me. I felt like, this program is really not doing too good. I think I can help it. So it was for me, but it was for the enterprise as well. So don't be afraid to try new things. Don't let your ego get in the way. Do not let your ego get in the way of taking assignments that you might not think are the best. It's amazing what you can turn things into. Anything they give you, you can turn it into something and have an impact. So that's the way I feel.
It's
couldn't agree more with
stuff, isn't it? I mean, I think I'll probably take this podcast and play it to my team, to be honest, and say, look, this is what Joe said. I've told you as well. But you generally get those challenges. I think where you talk about a 40-year career, there's obviously been some highlights, but you must have had challenges. I can't believe that's all been played and sailing all the way through. Some things can, certainly my career, knock me back, and you have that
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah.
Passion to get through. I mean, I've written how do you stay motivated on the questions we wanted to ask you, but I think motivation will only take you so far. There's something more than that, isn't there? What is that keeps you going?
Yeah, I think, for me, I always tell my kids who are now grown in their careers and everything and families, I tell them I lost more jobs than I got, and, there were some of them that I should have gotten, right? And I think that, you have to get through that process very quickly. You're a little ticked off, you're a little this, but you have to really work through that rapidly and then, self-reflect. I think leadership, is about self-reflection. I really, really do. Every day you should be self-reflecting. And I think so for me, what helped me, Max, whether it was a conscious thing or just part of my nature, let me self-reflect on why didn't that happen and what can I do better? Things like that. Having people motivated me. I loved interacting with people, not, just to solve problems and things like that. So kind of a self-motivated person, but I can tell you that there were times when I got bumped around, and so, you just have to self-reflect and take it to the next level. And I was very lucky in my career. There are probably about three individuals who were just thought leaders, and they were tough, but they were amazing thought leaders who empowered me. And Vic Chance from Johnson & Johnson and Fred McClintock from Allied Signal and some Courtney Billington from Johnson & Johnson. These guys were just real role models for me, and I tried to take a little bit of them into me. That helped as well. Not everything, because we're all our individuals, but you can look at some leaders and say, you know what, I like that piece. I like that piece. I didn't like that piece, and kind of mold yourself. I think that helped me a lot as well, Max, to be honest with you, because you're going to get bumped around. In 40 years, you get bumped around. Some things are out of your control, or you take the heat for it, and how do you face it and then move on, right? So
I love this. I'm taking it personally as well. Thank you. It's really good advice. I hope everyone else benefits from this as well. I'm sure they will.
I mean, it touched my heart. I resonate with your answer so much.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, Charlotte, I mean, Charlotte, you're always, how do I say, you got to be in the game to play the game, right? And I think you have to have that kind of attitude, and even things are tough. I mean, in my new role at Rutgers, running a master's program, I never would have dreamed of that, right? There's so many great, bright students, great professors there at the school, and I'm like, what am I doing here? Right? But you get engaged with it, try to grow the program, be innovative, look up to others. I've had some nice mentors at Rutgers, and I think that kind of keeps you going, even at this stage of my career. My second career, I guess you'd call it. I don't know, whatever it is.
Definitely continuous learning, and just don't be afraid to fail. What's the worst that can happen?
Exactly. And believe me, I've failed, but you bounce back. I mean, it's cliche-ish, but if you don't self-reflect, you never bounce back. You just don't.
And I agree with you also with this element of don't let your ego go in.
No,
because
exactly.
I see, especially in that younger generation of talents, they approach me via LinkedIn. I get hundreds of messages. Mm-hmm. I want to become a manager. I want to create impact. But in order to become a manager, in order to create impact, there are certain boxes you just need to tick. In school, you need to get through. And even my career, I started in the automotive production.
Yes, that's right.
3 shifts.
Yes. That's beautiful.
Even this Excel number crunching, it does not happen miraculously. Someone has to do it.
Exactly.
Or even back then, when I worked at Porsche, all these POs that I then had to fold and put in the envelope and print out the addresses.
Yes.
Someone's got to do it. And that's why I was never, I never let my ego go in.
Yeah,
I think
it's a great, and you got great examples, Charlotte, because in your own personal development, you were on a manufacturing floor in an automotive industry, which is, and not a lot of women on the manufacturing floor in the automotive industry, right?
Absolutely.
You had to, and
to bake.
So, yeah, that's right.
I had to stand on this little stool in order to do the work.
Yeah. No, so I mean, all of those things.
Yeah.
I think it's important because you see a lot of students, and a lot of people want to work for the big companies. I want to work for Honeywell or J&J or Merck. And I say, oh my gosh, but there's so many like startup companies that are so exciting, or these mid-tier companies that are supporting the big companies. Oh, this is a place where you can really connect and make an impact. And, obviously you're all attracted to, the nice, companies that people know about globally and all, but there's so much infrastructure in the supply chain, in the value chain that supports the motherships, what's there.
So I've never subscribed to the view of working for big companies. For me, it's been about learning, and that's you're absolutely right there. It's you can learn just as much in a startup or a business that's where you're working with the founder and he thinks he's the greatest salesperson in the world. There's so many examples, isn't there, you can learn from.
It really is. And we've been, a lot of the projects we now recruit for our experiential learning are from startups, right? And so that we can, and I like working with the startup owner, if you will. Talk to them about what they really, really need, try to match talent with that. And the students get, just a great experience. You got to have an entrepreneurial mindset as well. Yeah. Even if you're in a big company, I guess the phrase used to be intrapreneurial, right? But you've got to have that. You got to have that mindset in everything that you do. So I think, that becomes super important. And Charlotte, you did those things. I remember when you were on the team and, you were crunching a lot of numbers, right? And you always wanted to communicate those numbers to me, right? And all of those types of things, and try to connect the numbers to what you thought we should do, right? Which becomes important. So it wasn't just number crunching. It was like, I'm going to crunch the numbers. I'm going to try to create some insights. And I think I'm going to propose what we should do, who we should work with, and all of those other things. And you kind of took it all the steps, and that was important. And then, of course, for you were always a team player as well. So that was always part of the equation. You weren't sitting in a corner crunching, you were sharing. And I think those things become super important in people at every stage of your career, whether it's mine or somebody starting out early. I think that's key.
It helps with decision making, and it helps at the end with storytelling. Joe, and I remember me taking up new roles, even roles where I had no idea what I was going to do. The piece of advice you kept on giving me is be the sponge, be a sponge.
Yes, that's right.
The piece of advice that I give to my team. When you get new projects, when you are on your team, be that sponge.
Yes, so absolutely. And it's really true. I'm glad you brought that up. I have a picture on my desk here of my grandfather and I, and he's the one who told me that. Be a sponge. He was an entrepreneur. He had his business and had factories and all this good stuff. Very successful guy. But he used to tell me, be a sponge. And I guess it just stuck with me, Charlotte. So you keep telling your people that. We'll just keep it going down to generations, right?
That's how we do it. And Joe, and also your famous quote, what you are famous for, be inspired to inspire. Maybe you could share how that quote came up. Maybe there's also a story.
I don't know. It really was more of an observation than anything else, because like I told you that I saw people that, had an influence on me in my career or in my life, whatever. And you got inspired from them. And I think for me, it created an energy inside of me to say, okay, now I feel like I'm more equipped, right? You built the muscle, type of thing. And so now it's time to give back some of that, right? So it's like it's like the supply chain. Now it's a circular supply chain. Well, with people, it's a circular thing, right? And I would look at people who really, I would say, inspired me. And I'd say, you know what? I'm going to go out and try to put a little bit of that on the teams. And that's really how it, and I'm sure other people have coined the phrase too, Charlotte, I don't know, but it was more about how I felt, and then to put the words with how I felt. But I think you always have to give that back. But it's not others.
It's not a quote I've heard before, actually, and I really love it. It makes total sense because it's, again, back to that passion piece. If you are inspired, when we're inspired as people, we change, don't we? We become passionate. So it's that inspiration that probably drives that passion. That's when we change and we become more enthusiastic about our subject. We warm to our subject.
No, it's very true. So think about today, right? So Charlotte inspires me, right? I'm just saying, right?
And
Charlotte, and she has her challenges and all this good stuff. Take those challenges aside, right? Inspires me. And so I could either on this podcast check the box or be inspired. So I'm inspired. So maybe I can inspire somebody who listens to this thing in the future.
Absolutely. And that actually is the best way to end this podcast. Be inspired to inspire.
There you go.
The best finishing words.
There you go.
So thank you so much
for your
time today. I will forever treasure this moment.
That was great. I really enjoy talking to you both, and keep up the good work with the podcast that you guys put on. And it's really great. Keep it up because people are learning, and that's really great. So thanks for the opportunity.
Oh no, thank you so much. It's fantastic speaking to you. It's been inspiring.
There you go.
Yeah. Yes. Well, obviously Charlotte's been talking about this one in particular for a long time. So I know it's taken us a while to get this together, but I'm just really pleased we've done this, and I just hope everyone does benefit from it as much as I have. So fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. Charlotte, God bless. Max, God bless. Do good.
God bless.
All right. Get ready for that big conference you're chairing in a couple of weeks. All right.
You got it.
All right, guys. Be good. See you later.
Thanks, Jason. Take care.
Be good.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Do good.